Good evening, this is Robert Sidell. Great pleasure to be with you here on this Sunday night on President's Day weekend 2023. It's a great honor and a privilege. It's the Gateway Show. I'm thrilled to be with you here on this Sunday evening and joining together with you to co-create some miraculous possibilities. Are you up for that in your life? Are you up for miraculous possibilities? I talk about that a lot of times. You know what? That's why I have a card that says, expect a miracle. But you know, I'm very serious about it. You got to be open to that idea. And that's the first step. That's the first step, is to be open to the idea that you are endowed with the potential to create, to dream, to come up with ideas that could change radically improve the quality of your life almost instantaneously. I'll even say instantaneously. Some of it may be instantaneous. The idea may be instantaneous, but then also on top of that, oops, I just shot something here. Hold on a second. Okay, hold on. Whoops, still not right. The idea is instantaneous, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to take action. So tonight, I want you to just be open to the idea that where you are right now, you can go forward into a magnificent light. Just be open to that idea. And then simultaneously, let's be open to the idea that wherever we are, hey James, good to see you. Great to see you. It's great to be on here. So here's the key for you and I to remember, and we have to all remember this all the time. Everybody does. Right now, this moment in time, you have the opportunity to awaken to higher possibilities, greater truths, greater insights, a better life than you've ever imagined. Right now. And see, the first reaction to us mostly is, well, really, how come? It hasn't been that way before. Whatever. It gets stuck in our mind. Hey, Debbie, how you doing? Good to see you there. So wherever you are right now, whatever your story is, we all have a story. Everybody's got a history. And tonight I'm making, the topic is heaven on earth. How can you and I, hey, Linda, nice to see you there. How can you and I encounter a heaven on earth, on this earth? And by the way, it's last week I didn't do the show. It was Super Bowl weekend, and one of the first times I've actually not done the radio show during that time period. And you know, I really watched the whole game, and it was fun. It was, I don't know how many of you, probably a certain number of you probably are aware of that show, but it's a great lesson for all of us. I mean, they got right to within 2 or 3 minutes to the end of the game, and it was still tied. Maybe it was 10 minutes to the end, but whatever, it was very close. And the score, well, first off, the team that won, the Kansas City Chiefs, were actually behind. And when they entered the second half. So think of your life. Maybe you are behind some way or another. And everybody is. I mean, everybody feels like they're behind some of the time. We all do. In my mind, whatever I think I might have accomplished, I'm behind on that. On the other hand, I'm very happy with where I am. So both things are true. But the point is that it's normal to think you're behind somewhat. Or be behind even. But what's great about that game last week was a reminder that they came back in, and they didn't give up. They could have said, "Well, gosh, this other team's quite a bit ahead of us. We don't have a very good chance of winning, and we're going to lose." They could have set into a losing mindset, right? But they didn't do that, and it wasn't really. But they still had to fight a tough battle. And then it wasn't until just a few minutes, maybe in the last 10 or 15 minutes. Some of you will know better than me. They finally got the score tied. And then it's tied. You know, they finally fought all the way back to be tied. And then they just had a few minutes left. And this other team had been winning the whole game. So there still is a great chance that our team could have won. But they didn't give up. And that's what you and I have to remember. And then suddenly at the very end, they won. That's just kind of the bottom line. And so it's a great moral for all of us. It doesn't matter where you're at in your life. It doesn't matter where you're at. It doesn't matter what you think you should have done. It doesn't matter what your age is. Some of you might be saying, "Well, I'm too old. I'm in the second half. I'm over 50." Okay, let's say you think 100 is a long life, or long, about the longest you're going to get. Maybe. Well, if you're over 50, you're in the second half of your life. Maybe in the real truth is, if you're only going to live to 70, to 80 or something, you're more than half. But the point is that it'd be very easy to say, "Well, what have I done so far?" But the bottom line is that, just like in that game, you tonight could make a decision some kind of decision. Hey, Denise, nice to see you. I met Denise down at Tony Robbins I met her down at Tony Robbins down in Florida back in November. You never know. You never know when you're going to meet somebody, any person in your life, that's going to change your life. And you could cultivate your consciousness every day. That's why I'm always talking about, again, miracle-minded consciousness. If you saw this world as a place, a game in which miraculous possibilities are hiding all the time, waiting for us to reveal them, can you see how differently you would approach life? And I fully understand, please don't me saying this. It doesn't mean that there aren't adversities in life. There are real, genuine issues in the world. I'm not disputing any of that. Just in this last week, we've had a serious, very, very devastating, actually, earthquake in Turkey, and a huge number of people have died, and that's going to be devastating to the people who survived. And some of them have lost a lot in their lives, their families. Oh, thank you, Denise. Says, I brighten up her Sundays. Thank you, Denise, for saying that. It makes a big difference to me. So I'm not trying to say that there aren't any issues in this life. Oh, that's interesting. You're Turkish, Denise. That's interesting. Huh. Funny I would bring that up right now, and you're on there. I'm sure Denise, this nice young lady I met back at the Tony Robbins event, Unleash the Power Within, is saying that she's Turkish. Yeah, so I'm sure for those people it's devastating. And there's simply no question around it, and it's no simple answer to that question. But we have to be willing to, in the world, so let's see something here. We have to be willing to keep rising up, including and moving beyond everything that has happened. It's the only answer for all of us. Otherwise, we're perpetually stuck in a downhill spiral here in this world. So we have to make a choice. And so tonight I was thinking of the famous phoenix bird. How many of you know of the phoenix? The phoenix is the story of this mythical bird. Let's see, I'll tell you what it says basically. It's an immortal bird associated with Greek mythology that cyclically regenerates and is otherwise born again. It really obtains new life by rising from the ashes of its predecessor. So this bird somehow is destroyed into ashes, but somehow the very ashes come back again and gives a rebirth to the phoenix bird. This is an ancient myth. But the point is, of that story, whatever you've encountered in your life, you have the attitude you're going to be like the phoenix. It doesn't matter what kind of adversity you've encountered. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't. There's no other alternative, really. There's only two basic choices for all of us. We're either going to become defeated by the circumstances of the world, or we're going to use the circumstances of the world to grow and to become something much greater. Think about it. It's a puzzle, really. Hey, Barb, it's nice to see you. It's funny. I see some people posting on Facebook. And by the way, we're broadcasting on the #1 talk station here in Las Vegas, but we're also simulcasting on Facebook. So if you ever want any friends, they can listen anywhere in the world. If they got Facebook, they can listen. And it's recorded, and you can actually listen later, too. So I want you to stop and think for a minute. We all encounter reversals and adversities in our life. We just do. But the key is, are we going to be like that phoenix? Are we going to say, okay, this was a reversal, but out of this reversal, it contains the seeds of my victory. And therefore, if I can hold on to that conviction that it holds the seeds of my victory, then I have the ability to rise up higher than I ever was before. Henry Ford, who was really a true visionary, and he was somebody that started the whole modern movement towards mass-producing cars. Hey, Elle. Is it Elle or Ellie? I'm not quite sure. My mother's name was Ellie, or Eleanor. But so he started the whole modern mass production of automobiles. So he's the first one that made them affordable for the average person. But one of the things he said, he was a very creative visionary. And one of the things he said is that your greatest mistake may be exactly what you need to accomplish your greatest success. And then, so that's what Henry Ford said. This was a very phenomenally successful person. Then you have Thomas Edison, who said that he learned from his failures, and the failures were what allowed him to succeed. So when he went to create the electric light bulb, he had approximately 10,000 ideas that failed before they came up with the modern incandescent light bulb, which now is, by the way, outmoded, but it was almost a century that it was the dominant kind of light bulb. And so everybody else said it was impossible. Light bulbs were basically just a technological curiosity. They were outrageously expensive. They weren't feasible for anything other than just experiments. They were nothing that ordinary people could have. Just like cars were the same way. They were not something that ordinary people could have before Henry Ford. So Edison said, wait a minute. I know. See, Edison has an uncanny ability to say, I know there's a way to do something, and I'm going to find it. I don't care. You can tell me whatever you want to tell me. I'm going to find this answer. Hey, Janet, good to see you. She'll be back. She'll be sharing some ideas with us later on, towards the end of the show. So Thomas Edison, and I wish there were more people like him today, but the truth is there really are people like him. Elon Musk is one of those people. And he's really pioneered many, many different possibilities for all of us and made a gift to all of us. He's one of those rare creative visionaries. And we've had Steve Jobs, and we've had some real true visionaries in our world. That's what we've been lucky about in our society, in our world. We have to create an environment where we encourage people to have dreams and work on making them. Some of you listening right now could be listening to this, and some little spark could happen in your eye, in your mind, and so you could take an action and tomorrow embark on a direction that would totally change your life. So this is Robert Sidell, and you're listening to The Gateway Show. We'll be back in just a second, but I'll be staying with you on Facebook. For those of you on the radio, stay tuned. I'll be back in just a moment. This is Robert Sidell, The Gateway Show. So my friends that are listening on Facebook, it's a constant journey for all of us. When we read of a story, one of my good friends, I had a friend since elementary school, literally since kindergarten. And we get together about once a year, he and a few friends of mine that I've known literally since elementary school. And we are a wide disparity of beliefs. In our group, there's a couple people who have strong faith in God, in which I'm one of them. And we've got a couple that declare themselves as atheists. That's what they say about themselves. And then there's one that says he's an agnostic, means he just doesn't know. And so we have a wide diversity. I was talking to my friend that calls himself an agnostic yesterday. And he goes, well, he goes, I'm still wondering if God's around, how come all those people, get killed in this event in Turkey, this earthquake? And I said, you know what? I said, and the same thing happened a couple of years ago. He mentioned the same thing to me when there was that tsunami in Southeast Asia that led to a large number of people dying. And those are legitimate questions. And I really ultimately beyond the scope of this particular show to try to get into, but I'll say this much. We can never really have complete answers to things like that. But we have a choice. All of us have a choice. Are we going to keep reaching for the infinity and divinity of God? Or are we going to let the world talk us out of it? And it's always that choice. And that's true in our own individual lives, and no matter how far you expand the circle out beyond your life. Are you going to believe that you're defeated and all washed up? Or are you going to believe that there's an answer waiting for you? There's always that possibility. Oh, James is saying hi to you, Janet. So that's always the test, isn't it? We're always tested the same way. Are you going to give up believing in yourself, in God, and in life? Are you going to let the naysayers, the people that believe life is awful, talk you out of it? Hey, Annabella, my friend down in living down in San Miguel de Allende. I just was talking. I'm talking to a couple friends down in Mexico, a couple of different friends down in Mexico right now. Annabella, I should ask you. Do you talk on WhatsApp? Is that your way of communicating down there, Annabella? I'd be curious if you can tell me, because that's the way people tend to communicate down in Mexico. WhatsApp. It's free. It's beautiful. I just talked to somebody in Japan on Friday with WhatsApp. It's amazing. Before these things would have been so complicated, but it's a very international world we live in, isn't it? Very international world. So I'm going to come back to it real simply again. I think we're about to go back on the radio. Good evening. This is Robert Sidell. Great pleasure to be with you here on this Sunday evening and on President's Day weekend. And I've had a fun day today with my kids. My family came over, and one of my relatives today had her birthday, so we celebrated and had a nice gathering. And then my kids have been playing video games with each other, group video games, where they each get into a different computer. And it's fun. I mean, you know what? It's those simple little pleasures of life, being with one another. Plus, it was a nice sunny day today. I hope some of you enjoyed that here in Vegas. And I sat out in the sun for a while. My dad was a dermatologist for 60 years. And you know, a very leading one, by the way. People came to him from all over the United States and in Southern California. And one of the things, he was a strong believer that sun was good for our skin in certain doses. And he said, you know, you should get some full spectrums without sunscreen on, exposure to the sun, for a lot of people, because what that does is it stimulates your immune system. Nobody knows exactly why, but there's considerably higher, certain types of cancer rates are higher up in the Pacific Northwest in the Seattle area, and that some people believe it's because of less sun. So I can only tell you that sun has a health-inducing effect on us in the right doses. So it's very, you know, when it's nice this time of year, go out and sit in the sun a little bit, close your eyes, and let the sun shine on your face. My dad also used to sometimes open his mouth and let it shine back in the back of his throat to keep it. So he always thought it was like sterilizing his throat, keeping him healthy. But whatever it was, I mean, he lived to 99 and a half, so I guess some of his ideas were pretty good. But the bottom line is that sun in the right doses is very healthy for us. It keeps us animated. It stimulates our entire endocrine and immune system. And so we want that. We need that. And so it just happens to be today. We're starting to get a little more sun here in Vegas. And it was cold and windy during the week this weekend, and suddenly we're getting some real pretty weather right now. So I'm going to come back to the idea tonight of being like that phoenix. You got to have the courage, no matter where you are. And this is a puzzle, but I've had to do it over and over and over again in my life. I'll tell you something. When I was in the first year of law school, I remember, two things I should tell you. I was going to go to this one law school, and I had been admitted there. And hey, Jonelle, my Hawaiian healing friend. So I was waiting in line for admissions to the first year of law school, in this one law school. For whatever the reason, I'd applied to another school in the same town. I don't need to name any names or anything. For some reason, I got an inner feeling like, I don't know that I belong here. Strangely enough, I don't know where that came from. I thought, I really feel like I'd like to be somewhere different. So I stuck a dime in the payphone, that's how long ago it was, and called the other law school where I knew I'd been put on some sort of night school list or something, which I did not want to do. And I called and said, any chance I could get in? They'd actually started school 2 weeks earlier. And the lady got on the phone and she goes, well, actually, if you come over right now, we'll register you. So guess what? I got in my car, got out of line at school 1, got in my car, drove over to the other school, and got myself registered in the other school. I was a couple weeks late. And guess what? By the end of that first year, the second semester, I was number 1 in my class out of over 225 students. And my study partner, she and I kind of traded off. She was number 1 part of the time, and I was number 1 part of the time. But the bottom line is, and she's a very sweet person, by the way. I'm still friends with her after all these years. But the point is, I was in one place. I followed my inner instinct. You got to follow the opportunity. And then I went to another place, got in behind everybody at the very end of the line, and came out at the front of the line. And then at the end of that year, because I did so well, I applied, and I was admitted to all the top level schools in the West Coast. I didn't apply at other places, but Stanford, UC Berkeley. I was admitted to these different law schools and other top schools too. And that's because I did so well the first year of the school. So I started behind at the end of the line, got to the front of the line in the first year of school, and then from there, I got transferred to I went to UC Berkeley, which is considered one of the top publicly funded law schools in the United States, one of the top 10 of all kinds of law schools in the whole United States. And then, listen to this, this is not about trying to pat myself on the back, it really isn't. I then graduated with honors from that law school. So from being at the end of the line in the very first law school, getting out of the line there, saying I don't belong here, getting myself into another law school, then from that law school getting into UC Berkeley, then at UC Berkeley graduating with honors, and then taking the bar exam in 3 different states. It's just been a journey of me taking each doorway and climbing higher. Now, the point is, everybody can do that. That's, for me, is law. You're not in a legal field, perhaps, is listening. But the bottom line is, it doesn't matter where you are. There's a new idea that you could put into your consciousness that could unlock a whole new possibility. In my book, The Gateway, I talk all about the idea that every business is waiting for a new idea to be transformed. Just to give you a simple, well-known example. Look at McDonald's. As a matter of fact, the first McDonald's we used to drive by it when I was a kid, and before it was McDonald's, or it was one of the first ones that was a franchise. I'm not quite sure, but the bottom line is, hamburgers have been around since the beginning of our country. But what is it? This guy, this family had this kind of way of making hamburgers that were very kind of standardized, whatever you want to call it, kind of like Henry Ford did the cars. And you could get hamburgers very inexpensively. And this guy named Ray Kroc came along and says, hey, there's an idea here. He was just an equipment salesman. And so he made a deal with them. And make a long story short, he then turned that idea into what we call McDonald's today, to the point where billions of hamburgers are served all the time. So he looked at what everybody else looked at, but found something different and revealed a whole new possibility that's really released prosperity and opportunities for people all around the world. And it's over and over and over and over again. That's the story. And the problem is, sometimes I have to talk to my kids about this. I'll say, there's more opportunity than ever before. And sometimes one of them might say to me, well, really, Dad, are you so sure? But what I want to say about that is if you look, I'll give you another example from our own joint collective history. In the early 1980s, before I came to Las Vegas, we went through a down recession in our country, and I remember talking to people saying, you just can't earn the money you could have earned before. In fact, I was dating a young woman when I first came to Las Vegas, and she happened to be from a wealthy family, and her family owned a casino, and a couple of different casinos. And she was talking about, you just can't earn the same kind of money, even though they were very successful. And it's easy to fall into that kind of a trap, thinking that greater opportunities behind you. But actually, in those early 1980s, we were just at the beginning of the entire personal computer world, just the beginning of it. It hadn't even started yet. There was no such thing as a personal PC. And then suddenly in about 1983, 1984, right in there, IBM came out with this little machine that had 2 floppy disks in it. Some of you remember that. And that was the first personal PC. I mean, there might have been 1 or 2 others. Apple had something, but that was the first one that was commercially viable. And you paid a lot of money for this little thing, that 2 floppy disks with really almost no storage at all. And that was entirely marked the beginning of a whole new adventure in expansion. The idea of having computers in your own home were still, nobody thought about that. What? That doesn't make any sense. IBM actually came out saying people don't need computers in their house. So that's in my book too, The Gateway. But my point is that people thought the best was behind them. It's the same trap we've fallen to over and over and over again. But then you had Bill Gates come along, founding Microsoft. You got Steve Jobs working in a garage, coming up with the Apple computer, which I'm a big Apple fan. I've got enough of his phones and his computers too. And he came up with these ideas, just kind of thought, and he was adopted, and he grew up in a family with no money and started everything out of a garage. He had no unusual benefits or advantages. Some people would say he grew up at a disadvantage. Because again, he didn't even know his own parents. But he did have loving parents who did raise him, adoptive parents. But in that moment, had he fallen into the trap, like so easy to do, or Bill Gates or anybody else, started thinking the best is behind us. Gosh, the good old days were back when you could do this or that, and boy, it was so easy. If he had fallen into that trap, in either one of those guys, we never would have heard of Apple computers, one of the wealthiest companies in the world. We never would have heard of Microsoft, and would have never had, Windows and all these things on our computers. We would have never had our iPhones, and all these different things. if people had just believed the best is behind them. But instead, people believed, and let's talk about this too. This is just another example of this. Steve Jobs. So he worked on this young guy, got his Apple computer going, but then he got into a conflict. A lot of you know about this. Then he got into a conflict, and he, with the management of his own company, and that he had brought in actually, his own Apple software company and computer company, and he was forced out. And I've read the book and seen movies on it and everything, and the bottom line is he thought he was washed up. He was actually embarrassed and ashamed to go out in public because he thought he was such a failure. See, again, that moment of adversity where what's inside of your soul has to rise up to be more than what you have encountered. And so he thought he literally wouldn't go out in public. He felt he'd dropped the mantle of the tech generation, and he'd been a fool and he'd been stupid. And even the very person he had hired was the one who fired him, basically, or the board of directors, but he blamed that guy. Okay, we're going to go to a break right now. This is Robert Sidell, The Gateway Show. My message tonight is about letting yourself be reborn into new possibilities and not letting the world defeat you so you can create a heaven on earth. But I'll be back in just a moment. Stay tuned on the radio. Don't be back. Stay with me on Facebook. So my friends, so here you have Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs, he felt like a complete, absolute, abject loser. He actually sold his stock in Apple. He was so ashamed, made some money on it. But then he went off and tried one thing after another. He got involved. I'm not going to try to recount his whole story, but he got involved in Pixar, which became enormously successful, created Toy Story and all these other things, made money on that. And then it turns out Apple started to go out of business. A lot of people probably forget that. But Apple, there were articles saying they only had weeks or months to go on. They were going to file bankruptcy. Oh, great. Denise says she needed to hear this. So we all need it, Denise. All of us do. Denise, that's the reason why I'm doing this show, is we all need to be reminded not to let the world talk us out of our dreams, out of our good that is waiting for us. We all need this. So Steve Jobs, he worked really long hours in Pixar. He also had another company that started another computer company, but that one never really took off as well. But then Apple was like about to go bust, and he did the unthinkable. He went back and somehow got himself back in at Apple again, and he went back in. At first he wasn't going to be the CEO, but I believe he did actually become the CEO again, and he pulled the rabbit out of the hat again, and guess what? He went on to the trajectory we now know about. And then a few years later they came up with the iPhone, and the iPod came first, and the iPhone, and all these new inventions, and he totally revolutionized the world because he didn't give up. If he had believed he was a loser, if he had made that his identity, he would have failed. He could have gone to a counselor or somebody and would have told him, yeah, you're a failure, and they would have given him a lot of compassion for his failures and told him, don't feel bad about it, it's normal, we all failures, which is true, we do, by the way. But if he had stopped there, if he had let that become his identity, that I am a failure, if he'd let that become his identity, then he would have never gone on to create the Pixar world that brought us Toy Story and all these different movies, and he never would have gotten back to Apple to bring it into the next generation of the most successful company in the world. You think about that. If he believed he was a failure and didn't allow himself to overcome that belief. So that's what you and I have to do. Wherever we're at in our life, whatever the world's telling us, it's so easy to fall into what's called stinking thinking. I'm awful, I'm a loser, I have no hope, the world's no good, the world's no opportunity. It's easy to fall into that. As a matter of fact, media pumps that story all the time. Media feeds that story all the time. That's what media kind of makes its living doing. Okay, I'm about to be back in the show again. Good evening, my friends. This is Robert Sidell. It's the Gateway Show, broadcasting live over Las Vegas' #1 talk station, and simulcasting on Facebook. And I've got various people telling it. The whole purpose of this, my friend Denise thinks she needed to hear this. What I want to say about that is that the message tonight is really about keep believing in life and in you and the possibilities of life. We're always presented with that as a test. We always are. And today, an extra challenge that we didn't have maybe 50 years ago, let's just say, or not even 50 years, 25 years ago. We have social media bringing us, and our news bringing us the negative stories everywhere in the world. So there can be something that happens maybe in Southeast Asia or something, or like we were talking about earlier, this devastating earthquake in Turkey. And these things are legitimate, real issues, not to be forgotten in any way whatsoever. But the problem is that those are brought to our mind every single day. 100 years ago, people had to deal with the problems of their own world, their own community. And sometimes they got more than that, don't get me wrong, but a lot of times, but mostly their problems were just the local community. They weren't being saturated with what happened 10,000 miles away. They weren't being inundated with that. They weren't being inundated with the bad behavior of the very tiny percentage of people that end up causing all these problems. They weren't being inundated with all that. And I'm sure, and even in spite of that, a lot of people became negative and depressed and discouraged. I get that. But the point is, today the challenge we have is you go on Twitter, you go on Facebook, you go on anything, or just tune on your YouTube or anything else, or TV, you're going to hear about anybody's moral failures, any wars in the world that are going on that, bringing suffering to people. You're going to hear about all these things that before wouldn't have been in your face. And it's very easy to start to believe and buy into the idea that there's no possibilities, there's no hope, we're just a world that's got all these problems. So I told Ernie and Janet I wanted to do it, focus on the idea of heaven on earth can be right here and right now, which Ernie almost always makes his prayers about that, and so I've always believed too. And the way to do that is not to pretend there aren't challenges in the world, but is to keep believing within you, like Jesus said, there is a power greater than anything you will encounter in this world. And that's why you need some kind of faith in God. You need some kind of faith in God. And, whatever it's going to take for you to face the appearance, I say appearance carefully, of scarcity, of limitation, maybe appearance of financial scarcity, appearance of illness even, appearance of illness in your life, appearance of economic change that may be scary to you. All these things are appearances. But it's interesting, during Christ's life, Jesus' life, over and over again, he showed that appearances don't have to control us. He had 5,000 people to feed, and he didn't have a nearby McDonald's. I'm joking, of course, but what did he do? He didn't let that appearance stop him. Instead, he looked to his connection to God, the eternal I am, and out of that he was able to bring forth food to feed 5,000 people. And you might be inclined to think, well, did that really happen? And I wouldn't object if you did question that. But here's what I want to say to you. If it was just one story like that, I'd be inclined to say, yeah, probably just all made up. But there's so many stories about him, and his disciples, his followers, were so convinced by everything that happened, including his resurrection, that they spent the rest of their lives sharing his stories, to the point where each one of them was killed, except one, literally tortured to death, sadly enough, which is very sad. But the point is, they never gave up those stories. So what I would tell you is that what he said was true. And so each of us have the possibility at every single moment in our life. Will we be defeated by appearances? Will the sickness, will the illness, will the scarcity, will the apparency of a society that doesn't seem to be good, or a world that doesn't seem to be good, is that going to stop you? Or are you going to believe in something greater and more powerful within you, in your relationship to God and the infinite power of grace? If you go to the latter approach, looking for good, finding good, feeding your consciousness good, then you're going to be like that phoenix bird that can rise from the ashes of a defeat into greater victory, just like Steve Jobs did, and just like Ford did, just like Edison did. Edison, as an example, Thomas Edison, he took his whole fortune and when he was in his 50s and invested in something to try to bring, it almost sounds corny to say, but he was trying to get iron ore with gigantic magnets. So he thought he could take these electromagnets, and it sounds like a joke almost, but and suck the iron out of the dirt with magnets. It's a pretty creative idea, actually. For all I know, they may actually do that today. I don't even know. But so he spent about 10 years investing in this, all of his fortune on that. And basically what happened is that he failed. It didn't work out. There were all kinds of headlines. They said Edison's folly, Edison's folly. And he was considered to be washed up, no good. He was not going to accomplish anything, go nowhere. But you know what? He didn't give up. And you know what? After that time, his greatest inventions came. Telephone. I mean, so many, the electric light bulb. All these things came after that time period in his life. Again, when you see this story over and over again, whether it's Steve Jobs getting kicked out of Apple, whether Edison blowing his fortune on something that did not work, you see people they're successful over and over and over again, where they're faced with an adversity, a failure on their part, a misjudgment, let's say, or just simply a failure, didn't work out, but they somehow don't give up. They don't identify with the failure. There's a saying, failure is not who you are, failure is a fact. It's an event. Failure is an event, but not your identity. Remember that. Failure is a single event. And Thomas Edison made it so clear that failures are the fabric from which success is woven. And so over and over and over and over again, and I had to do the same thing in my own life. It's all sorts of different ways at different times. I'm in the same world that you're in. And I faced times when I seemed like it was despair. I felt despair. Have you ever known despair? Have you ever just felt absolutely discouraged and like there's no way forward? They don't know what's going to happen. And I've looked into that despair, the pit of that despair. And I will tell you, if you can face despair and come out of it, you'll be 1,000 times stronger. If you can face despair and come out of it, you will be 1,000 times stronger. You will be 1,000 times stronger. And seen from that perspective, even when you encounter despair, it's a gift because it can transform. James says that is how it's mined. So it is how it's mined now. Let's see here. So what I want to say to you all tonight, that are listening or later on in a recording, we live in a world that's limitless. There's a lot of things on Reddit and online stuff. I've all sorts of conversations with some of my kids about some of these things. And they're going to try to convince you that, the best was 20 years ago or whatever, or 50 years ago, whatever. Men and women, they're getting confused about different things in their lives, in their world. And these are things that my kids are talking to me about. Or marriage is risky for men now, or marriage is risky for women, whatever. All these different thoughts are being out there. And it can be very easy for somebody to fall into a state of mind that, it's hopeless. The world's just a big mess. It's hopeless. But anybody who knows anything about history knows it's always been a mess in a way. It's always been a mess. Just one example. I've given you some personal examples of other people. Thomas Edison, facing all sorts of adversities and failures. I mean, I just gave you one example where he's lost his fortune over 10 years, but somehow was able to bounce back. There's so many stories like that. They're just routine for successful people. The difference, people who are successful, is even though they fail, they don't identify with their failure, and therefore they don't give up. And the people that are not as successful, what happens is, innocently, without condemnation, they start to identify with failure. They think, I'm kind of a loser. I'm just a failure. And if you start, anybody can have those feelings sometimes. And there's also sometimes all of us are a failure and a loser at a moment. We all lose some of the time. But we all do. But we have to be critical. I mean, it's critical that we do not identify with that. And if you're into that kind of stinking thinking, as soon as you notice you're in stinking thinking, get out of it as quickly as you can. Recognize you're in a world that is limitless. It's waiting for the next great idea. Whether it's the McDonald's, somebody walking into a store and saying, wow, this is a better way to serve hamburgers. And by the way, I remember as a kid, when I was in high school, You can get those for 15 cents, 15-cent McDonald's hamburger. And so that was an idea. Looking at hamburgers has been around forever, but a new way of presenting it, bingo, a new level of prosperity. And it's true with everything. Every single business has a better way to do it. Every single business is waiting for you to come up with an idea. Or maybe just do what you're doing better and more creatively. But the most thing, and here's the other point I want to say. There's the old tortoise versus the hare story. And a lot of you probably heard this story, but there was a race between a tortoise and a hare, which is a rabbit. Of course, a rabbit's much faster than a tortoise, I mean. And so they got in this race, but the rabbit was overconfident. He thought, I'm much faster than that old tortoise. So the tortoise just started moving along real slowly. Tortoise decided to take a nap. When he woke up, the tortoise won the race because the tortoise never stopped moving. You can succeed. Be like the tortoise and the hare. Little bit, and one of these days, you know what's going to happen? You're going to be at the top. You're going to be, it doesn't matter. You might be the top hairstylist. You might be, there's always ways to market what you're doing better. There's always a way to reach out to your customers better. Little incremental things you can do to become, get raving fans. Tony Robbins talks about creating raving fans. My business has a lot of raving fans. My law practice as an attorney. We have raving fans, people that really like what we do, like us. And there are other firms that have raving fans of their businesses too. But that's what you need. You need people that you need to figure out how to reach out and make people raving fans of what you do, and you can thrive and succeed in any economic time. This is Robert Sidell with The Gateway Show. We're going to go to a break. When we come back, we've got Janet and Ernie with us, and I'll keep staying with you on Facebook. Back in just a moment, my friends on the radio. So my friends, here's the thing for all of us. Wherever you are out there, any of you, whoever you are, just 1 second here. We all need to keep believing in ourselves all the time, every way and every day. You need to and keep raising your standards, keep believing in yourself. Don't identify with failure. Be like the phoenix and rise up from any failure and create something better. That's what Edison did, Thomas Edison. That's what Steve Jobs did. That's what Elon Musk has done. That's what Jeff Bezos did with Amazon. And all these people started with nothing. Nothing. Thomas Edison, he was kicked out of school. They told his mother he was learning disabled. True story. Think about that. Thomas Edison was kicked out of school when he was very young, a very early stage in his schooling. And his mother, she had a loving mother who believed in him. Think about that. How many people have succeeded because a loving mother believed in them? My mother believed in me. My dad believed in me. And of course, I like to speak in the present tense. My mother believes in me. My dad believes in me. We're eternal beings, I believe. So, the people who love you don't stop loving you. So wherever you are, my friends, I want you to know, don't identify with failure. Don't identify with your setbacks. Every setback has the potential to be turned around into a setup for a comeback. Every setback has a chance to be a setup for a comeback. Think about that. Everything you encounter has the potential to bring you closer to God, to life, to possibilities of success. Every single thing you encounter. Don't let anybody talk you out of your greatness. Don't let anybody talk you out of your potential. Hey, Ernie, how you doing? Can you hear me, Ernie?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. I can hear you too. Hopefully we'll have Janet on here in a couple of minutes. We're going to have Janet and Ernie with us in just a minute. So my friends that are listening right now, still on Facebook, remember, here comes Janet too. Believe in yourself. Believe in the potential within you. Believe in God. Believe in good. And believe it's greater than anything you could ever encounter. Believe in God. Believe in yourself. Believe in good. And your life can walk into a future better than you ever imagined. I think we're just about to come back on the radio. All right, we're just about to come back on the radio. This is Robert Sidell. Welcome back to the Gateway Show. It's a thrill and an honor to be here tonight with you. And so, this show reminds me of the greatness that I have to feed my mind and soul to do this show. And it's what's allowed me to continue to thrive and succeed. And LK just said, is it L or LE? I'm just curious if you ever want to say something. She says, you're such a great positive spirit to set the course for the upcoming week. Right, that's the idea. It's like a sailboat. I don't know, Janet and Ernie, I don't know if either one of you have ever sailed, but have either one of you been in sailboats? Ever been in sailboats, either one of you?
Maybe I did a couple times.
How about you, Janet? You ever been in a sailboat?
Once.
Once? Well, I actually sailed quite a bit as a kid and actually won some trophies, as a matter of fact. But here's the key. You have to set your sail. You have to tie it up. You got to hold it in place and then aim into the wind or the right angle of the wind, and suddenly you sail forward fast. That's what we have to all learn how to do. And that's what the show's about. It's realizing that the wind is free, but we have to harness the wind. Well, the energies of life, of God, are free, but we have to learn how to harness them. All right. Reverend Ernie, what do you got to share with us tonight? What do you got for us tonight, Ernie?
All right, thank you. Robert, can you hear me okay? Or
I can hear you
loud?
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, thank you, Robert. All right, the prayer is, my topic for the prayer is called Discover Heaven on Earth. Lord, thank you for giving us this blessed day and this adventurous life journey. We give gratitude for the many blessings you have bestowed upon us. Guide us to be in awareness of your presence and grace within us, that which encompasses our spiritual living, our dreams, discovering heaven on earth. We thank you for keeping us in excellent health, spiritual living, and discovering heaven on earth. We are grateful for the resources that surround us to use it for our physical, emotional, spiritual well-being, to be happy, joyful, compassionate, and experiencing inner contentment. Lord, guide us to share and to be a testimony to the people we come across on expressing our appreciation for our well-being and how we can be of service to others in times of their shortcomings. We give our gratitude and to acknowledge your blessings of happiness and staying focused in our spiritual journey, creating heaven on earth, and so it is. Amen.
Thank you, Ernie. I love you. Your prayers are an inspiration. I was thinking about it as I was doing the show tonight. This show, for me, I'm sure in its own way for you, working on those prayers has been good for you, hasn't it, Ernie? Doing all these different prayers. It kind of forces us to pull our mind into a good place, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Well, Reverend Janet, what do you have to say to us tonight?
Well, I'm going to read from Daily Word tonight, and it's actually for tomorrow, and it also follows a lot of what you were talking about. I follow the call of my heart and follow divine direction. There have been times when I have felt such a strong call to move in a certain direction that I simply could not ignore it. This call is my intuition nudging me to take action and move towards my highest growth. When I remember my intuition has its roots in God, in my divinity, I trust in the power of divine direction. I believe I am meant to live a full and vibrant life and use my gifts to express my human and spiritual natures as only I can. Heeding divine direction can feel scary if I believe I do not have what it takes to do what I am being called to do. At times such as these, I trust the call of my heart and not lead me astray. I am here to grow, to explore new directions, and to offer the best of myself to the world as I pursue my dreams and live up to my potential. And then from Psalm, he leads the humble in what is right and teaches the humble this way. Amen to that.
So I'll ask both you and Ernie, how do you think people can learn to rise up when they see news stories, as an example, like that earthquake in Turkey? How do they stay positive? My friend Denise is on there listening. Family's from Turkey, or she's Turkish anyway. Either one of you, what ideas do you have? How do you stay positive? This friend of mine that's not too sure how much he believes in God, that's what he brings up to me. Well, what about those kind of things? Either one of you have any ideas?
Well, I, when it happened a few days ago, almost like 10 days ago, the earthquake itself in Turkey and Syria, uh, I, uh, I prayed for, send out my love, love to them, love to the people that have been affected and to the relatives, those that have been affected, with their relatives being which killed, by the earthquake. But I sent out love, and I also prayed for help, prayed for aid for them to into get back to normal life, from aid from all over the world to help these people, those been affected.
Okay. What about you, Janet? How do you tell somebody who says, well, if God's real, why do things like that happen?
Um,
That's not an easy
well,
question, by the way.
it's what?
Never mind.
What'd
Just
you
go
say?
ahead. I said it's a hard
Oh,
question, really.
it really is a hard question because it depends on what you believe. And if you believe that God had something to do with it, and I don't, it's that's the way the world flows. Things happen, and that's what tests our faith and staying positive and all those other things that we try to do each day. I know that you and Ernie try to do, that we do each day. I should say try. We shift our being into seeing a more positive way of looking at it. But it has to do with what someone believes, because I don't think, obviously I don't believe God had anything to do with it. It's it's the way the world is.
I get it. And
But it's to
but you're
be in
saying
this
God is
world,
something. No, go ahead. What?
to be in this world, but not of it. Jesus said that.
Well, there you go. And I need to end that at that moment, but that may be as good of answer as
Okay.
any other, just because we're going to run out of time is what I'm saying. Matter of fact,
Okay.
before we end, let me say a little prayer for all those people over there in Turkey and other places.
That's
Let me just say a short prayer too. Heavenly Father, Holy Spirit, Jesus Christ, all that is good, we bow to you. Pray that your loving encouragement might reach out to people suffering and dealing with change and grief and loss in Turkey and Syria. And we just pray that the people who have survived will be given sustenance and care and help, and simultaneously that there's enough love coming to them that it'll give them a chance to rebuild again. And that we might all be forgiven for our doubts and blessed in our strengths, God. So we pray all these things in the name of Jesus Christ. We're out of time, my friend. God bless you all. This is Robert Sidell, the Gateway Show. We'll be back next week. God bless everybody. And thank you, Ernie and Janet.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.